When 500 strangers showed up on Scott Greene's ranch, led by a hostile HOA Karen, it wasn't just an unlawful camping trip. It was a deliberate invasion that exposed deep-seated prejudice and power imbalances. What began as a shocking trespass quickly spiraled into a confrontation, revealing the ugly truths lurking beneath the surface of property rights and community control. Scott knew he had to act, but his response would spark a storm that questioned who really belongs and who gets to decide. This is a story of resistance, racial injustice, and the fight to reclaim dignity. Scott Greene inherited a sprawling ranch passed down through generations, a sanctuary where his family's history lives in every tree and trail. It was more than land. It was identity and pride, deeply tied to his ancestors' struggles and resilience. The community around Scott's ranch was tightly controlled by an HOA board, led by a woman known as Karen, whose influence masked a desire not just to enforce rules, but to control whose presence was allowed. One summer, Karen orchestrated a massive camping event, inviting over 500 people onto Scott's privately owned land without permission. This wasn't a spontaneous act. It was a calculated display of power, bordered on intimidation. Scott watched as his peaceful sanctuary became overrun by strangers, some disrespectful, others oblivious to what was unfolding. The invasion wasn't just about camping. It was a blunt message about ownership, belonging, and exclusion. Here, in this quiet but tense corner of America, a deeper story of racial injustice began to unravel, one that Scott had never expected to face in his own backyard. The stakes were high, with the community watching and waiting for what would come next. The first few hours of the illegal camping trip felt like an overwhelming betrayal. Scott confronted Karen about the unauthorized gathering, but her dismissive attitude and sharp rebuffs underscored she wasn't just ignoring rules. She was wielding influence to assert dominance. The tension between them mirrored decades of unspoken racial divides, a fight for space that had nothing to do with land and everything to do with respect and power. As more campers arrived, chaos grew. Fires burning in prohibited areas, trash left behind, and Scott's warnings ignored. But beneath these actions was a darker thread, subtle racial tension simmering under the surface. Karen's campaign felt like an expression of exclusion, ensuring that certain voices and faces were kept out by those claiming authority. For Scott, this wasn't just property damage. It was a painful reminder of systemic injustices he had witnessed throughout life, coming to a head in this unexpected confrontation. The community's watchful eyes added pressure, with some siding with Karen's authority, others sympathizing with Scott's fight. The inevitable climax loomed as Scott debated how far he should go to protect his land and dignity. His choice to unleash his bulls wasn't impulsive. It was a desperate act of defense, a symbol of taking back control from those who sought to diminish him. The moment Scott released his bulls was electric with tension. The massive animals, symbols of strength and heritage, charged through the encampment, scattering campers in frightened disarray. Chaos erupted amid shouts and the thundering of hooves, an uncontrollable force against a sea of invaders. Karen's confident veneer cracked as her plan unraveled before her. The bulls weren't just protecting land. They became unstoppable enforcers against an invasion that challenged Scott's very right to exist in that space. Yet this moment of victory was bittersweet. The scene exposed raw fractures, fear, anger, and the harsh reality of exclusion and racial power struggles that played out far beyond property lines. Scott felt the weight of history pressing down, knowing this confrontation was a small but vivid reflection of ongoing racial battles in America. As authorities arrived, debate ignited over legality, rights, and racial undertones. For Scott, the bulls weren't just animals, they were a declaration that he wouldn't be erased or dominated. In the aftermath, Scott faced both praise and condemnation, but more importantly, he sparked conversations that few dared to have. The incident peeled back the layers of racial injustice deeply embedded in property disputes and community control. Karen and the HOA faced scrutiny, challenging their authority and motives. Scott's story became a beacon for those fighting similar battles, reminders that land and dignity are intertwined and that resistance against exclusion is essential. Yet, the fight is far from over. The question remains, in a society that claims equality, why are some still forced to defend their right to simply exist in their own land? Scott Greene's experience challenges viewers to reflect on the hidden racial dynamics beneath everyday conflicts, inspiring a deeper understanding and the urgent need for change. When the bulls scattered the invaders, they scattered more than just people. They disrupted a system built on exclusion and control. What would it take for true justice to follow?